Lord.
Okay,
Yes.
we're beginning now, Pastor. A very pleasant good afternoon to all of our friends who have joined us for this edition of Let's Talk. We are so delighted to have you with us. We wish you God's blessings. If you are listening via Second Advent Radio, welcome. If you are joining via YouTube or Facebook, we welcome you just the same. We have a very interesting discussion this afternoon. And in a moment, I'm going to be telling you about that discussion and about who our special guest for today is. But before we do any of that, we invite you at this moment to bow your heads as we have a word of prayer. Eternal Father and our God, we thank you for the opportunity and privilege to share with our friends in Radio Land and those who are listening via social media. We ask that as we discuss in this edition of Let's Talk, that your name will be glorified, that we will receive information that will fit us to better exemplify you in our characters. Take full control and have your own way. Be with our special guest today. Grant him your wisdom, we ask in your precious name. Amen. Well, this afternoon on Let's Talk, we begin a series under the wider context of Christian dress. Next week, we're going to be talking about the issue of jewelry and, whether Christians should be using jewelry or not. That promises to be a very interesting discussion. The following week, hopefully, we will talk about appropriate church attire. But for today, our topic, a very interesting topic, our topic for today is really about hairstyles and specifically the issue of the dreadlocks. We are talking today, of course, this is Let's Talk, and on Let's Talk, we discuss relevant issues that are not often addressed by church leadership in the public. It is our aim to provide a perspective on the position of the Seventh Adventist Church on these sometimes divisive issues. As I am saying now, on today's program, we begin this discussion on the delicate subject of Christian dress, and specifically we are dealing with the whole issue of the locks, the dreadlocks, some may call it. Should Rastafarians have to cut their locks when or in order to be baptized? Joining me today on Let's Talk, our special guest is coming out of Jamaica. Of course, if we're going to talk about Rastafarians, it is almost a given that we want to go to the place where many regard as the origin of Rastafarianism. So we have with us someone from Jamaica. I am going to be introducing him in a moment. In fact, let me just share with you that our special guest today is Dr. Merrick Walker. Dr. Walker is, as I indicated, Jamaican, and he is going to be our special guest today. Dr. Walker holds a PhD from Andrews University in religious education. He graduated from Northern Caribbean University. I believe in those days it was called West Indies College in 1988 with a bachelor's degree in theology. He began working in his ministerial internship and also teaching in the Portland High School in 1988, 1989. In 1990, he started as a district pastor. He has been involved in pastoral ministry ever since. He, in 1999, graduated from Andrews University with a Master's of Religion. As I indicated just now, in 2011, he graduated with a PhD with emphasis on religious education. Dr. Walker has served in many capacities. He is a lecturer of philosophy and religion at the Northern University. He has served the East Jamaica Conference as the Executive Secretary and Human Resource Manager, and currently he serves Jamaica Union as the Executive Secretary. We are so delighted to have Dr. Walker with us this afternoon. Dr. Walker, welcome, and say a word of greetings to those who are viewing and listening.
Thank you so much. I am honored to be here. Of course, I'm from the heart of where it all began in relation to Rastafarianism. And I am happy that I can join you, host Greene, on this special Let's Talk series. And it's always important to talk. That's where you have clarification and where we can leave the table, although with different perspectives, but with a very agreeable disposition.
I,
So I'm happy to be here. Let's talk. Let's
I
talk.
noticed, Doc, that you're almost just like me.
I'm honored. I am honored.
Well, it's
They say, wise men think alike, eh?
yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, we're going to get into a very intriguing discussion this afternoon. We are talking today about the matter of Christian dress, but specifically, we are dealing with should Rastafarians have to cut their hair? Now, this is within the wider context of Christian dress, of course, but many in the Caribbean community are passionate about this. A few years ago, I remember that there was quite a big debate across radio stations here in Antigua because a Rastafarian wanted to get baptized, and the evangelist told him he had to cut his dreadlocks, and he refused, and it became quite a discussion. Well, we're going to be broaching that subject this afternoon. So we have several requests of persons with dreadlocks desiring to be baptized. So the issue is, do they have to cut their locks? But before we deal with that question, Dr. Walker, let's first talk about the Rastafarian religion. We often associate Rastafarians as coming out of Jamaica. What is behind this movement? Can you just share with our viewers and listeners what really is behind the Rastafarian movement?
Thank you so much. There is a rich history of Rastafarianism in Jamaica. It began in the early 1930s, of course, influenced by several persons, chief of which was Marcus Messiah Garvey, a national hero of Jamaica. And he articulated across the West Indies, North America, the importance of Black consciousness, because having been enslaved, the Black man, according to Marcus Messiah Garvey, has been behind in his thinking and even own self-affirmation. So there was a Black consciousness that was articulated, and it was very effective throughout the Western Hemisphere. Then there was also a man born 1897. His name was Leonard Howell, who in the late 1920s, early in 1930s, in the 1930s, also highlighted that the old mother of Haile Selassie, having been selected and crowned as emperor of Ethiopia, and having world leaders paying homage to him, he was indeed the Christ incarnated. And so he advocated for Black consciousness also. And of course, you had Bob Marley and others. But the main thing about the history of Rastafarianism is that it looked forward for a better land and a better state from oppression, that is, and that was Ethiopia. And now we have different orders of Rastafarianism. We have the Bobo Shante, we have the 12 tribes, and we have another group. So it is really based on Black consciousness and looking back to the motherland with a Black Christ.
So am I hearing you saying, therefore, that the Rastafarians consider Haile Selassie as their God?
Yes, that was the original thought. And when he came in 1966, there were over 100,000 Rastafarians meeting him at the airport, bowing down to him. And you know, the history is clear that it was at that point that he declared that I am not your God. And you know that Haile Selassie was baptized as a Christian and up to his death claimed to be a Christian. So there is somehow many similarities between Rastafarians and Christians. And one of those is the acceptance of the Hebrew Bible as a guide. And of course, as you interface with Rastafarians, you realize that there are many similarities as health message, etc., etc. They don't eat pork, and adhere to a great extent to vegetarianism and what is natural. And there are cases where some of them are baptized within their own religion. I love to point out that it is not just a religion, but it's a social movement.
So Doc, what's behind the hairstyle?
It is a natural levity, as they call it, saying and expressing their own conviction. I'm using that word conviction very advisedly because as we seek to make change to the lives of others, we should understand their background. And the truth is, it is their conviction. The claim is that on the one hand, there are some who claim that they are Nazarites. And you know, in the Old Testament, Leviticus, there was the old Nazarite vow where no razor would touch the head of those who are so classified. But more than that, the majority of them claim that it is a natural thing given unto them from Jah, and no razor must come nigh thee.
So we are discussing the matter of when an individual who is a Rastafarian decides that he wants to become a Christian, and specifically a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, he wants to get baptized, it really then is a change of religion, correct?
You have a change of religion, a change of worldview, a change of position.
Now we have a raging debate. Should the identity therefore change when a person becomes a Christian? How we look at it. It might be safe to say that the locks becomes a symbol of the Rastafarian religion. I mean, you grew up in Jamaica. You are familiar with the birthplace of Rastafarians. Is that a correct assessment?
It is a very interesting point we are now segueing into in relation to the hair, the lock, and its symbols to a Rastafari. The truth is that it is very much associated with their philosophy and their belief and their culture within the culture. And hence, it is tagged to be an essential behavior, practice, adornment, if I say so, of their religion and their belief system. Because when you observe society, you do not really have the typical Christian being like that. So there is a clear distinction that the hair is a symbol of their belief system, their religion. So I'm anchored. And hence, as we seek to change and to advocate the same and to influence change of human behavior from one religion to another, we should be aware of how people really change. And you have different change theories and models out there, one of which is the Lewin's model. It has to do with unfreeze, change, and then refreeze. So to unfreeze, it means that you have entered into a dialogue, a conversation that will influence your ideology. And hence you open up and you unfreeze. And then, just to make it short, I'm just saying it quickly, then you change and then you refreeze the new ideas, the new life, the new religion. So it means, therefore, that we should be very tactful. The Bible says, "He who wins soul is wise," in getting a prospect Christian who is a Rastafarian to unfreeze. I think that's a problem. We do not get them to unfreeze.
Very interesting. Now, I want to pursue that just a little bit more. So, if I were, let's say, a Rastafarian, and I of course there are other lifestyle practices of the Rastafarian. There are some things that they hold in common with Seventh-day Adventists. Let me put it that way. I think the true Rastafarians use pork like we don't use pork either, because as you mentioned earlier, there are some especially Old Testament practices that they adhere to, the Hebrew Bible. Um, but then they also smoke ganja, marijuana. And there is this identity, which perhaps is one of the easiest ways you can identify that individual. So an individual walks up to you and he says, listen, I'm giving up allegiance to Haile Selassie and I want to follow Jesus. I want to become a Christian. My direct question to you is it reasonable that that individual changes his identity in terms of the outward appearance?
Okay, you are putting that in terms of trajectory, timeline. What do you do first? If you think about the Jewish community, typical Jewish community, you have the whole matter of, and you can think about this, behaving, believing, becoming. Yes,
Mhm.
that is the process, the formation of a community, or to have somebody engrafted into the community. Becoming, behaving, believing. Now, usually we say you must believe, you must behave, and then you become. Right. So my response to you is that it is reasonable and it is expected and it is tenable. But what about the whole matter of timing? How do we expect a person to change all of that which is ingrained over time in a short time? And maybe we should swing the pendulum to another model of change theory. which is the nudge, whereby you don't really expect overnight change, but incrementally. And you nudge a person along the line so that whatever you are proposing, it becomes the person's own value. So it is reasonable, my host, to expect change, but it might be unreasonable to expect change overnight.
Okay, that's a very interesting response. Let's follow it up just a little more. There are a few questions that are coming in. I'm sure that some more will come. Now, let's just make sure that we are following you. I mean, when a person becomes a Christian, the person does not become perfect. The Christian journey, the Christian life is a journey, we like to say. But God saves us up front. So we become Christians right away. Not so? We become Christians and we walk with Jesus. And we may still have some struggles. We may still have some challenges, giving up a few things here and there. Or we may even declare that we give them up, but we fall back. So there is that growth towards wholeness in Jesus Christ. Now let's just for a moment put that in the context. And I want to complicate matters here a little bit, in fact, because one of the other challenges that the locks today has now become a hairstyle that is not necessarily related to or indicative of the religion of the individual. Now, there may be differences. I've heard debates on either side. I've heard individuals say, listen, this does not mean I'm a Rastafarian. And I heard others say, don't call my locks Jed because there's nothing Jed about it. I've heard strong debates over that, but I've also heard individuals say, listen, this is not dreadlocks. This is just locks. This is just a hairstyle. And I've seen individuals who have come into the church who have been asked their locks, they do, and then they see the hairstyle and they say, well, what's the difference? What's going on here? So it gets a little complicated there.
Yes.
Therefore, I'm asking now, when the individual accepts Jesus Christ, his Lord or Savior, God saves that person at the moment of surrender, right? What do we do with the individual who says, listen, I'm accustomed to smoking marijuana. Now, I understand that the marijuana plant has been in itself a debate over recent times. In fact, just a few weeks ago, we had a program on that here on Let's Talk. But if an individual is been baptized and is an alcoholic, and you tell that person you need to give up your alcohol, and the person says, one of these days I will, but for now let me just get baptized and we'll work on that. How do we put that into the equation that you just presented?
Yes, it is important that we expand on this point. And by the way, I have had both situations where the prospective, the prophet cuts before he's baptized. I participate in that in my, not ministry, but my Christian walk.
Mm-hmm.
It was really a situation to hold a pair of scissors and to cut literally. Sometimes we talk from a distance, but when you're really involved, it was.
So you have played the role of the barber.
Yes.
All right.
All right. I did that, and I've seen the growth of such person. And I can tell you that even right now, in one of our churches in Toronto, Canada, the first elder was a Rasta, and also the treasurer in Jamaica, and they're doing pretty well now. And it's always when we have this discussion to talk with those who have really been there. You know? So I've had that experience. I've also had the experience where the person had promised to cut but did not cut and turn up for the baptism. And that's a challenge there now. But we went ahead and we baptized the person, and the person subsequently cut. Now the truth is, I had alluded to it before. We have to enter into the world of these persons and the formation of behaviors over time. And the truth is, while it is tagged, that is the law is tagged to the religious part of the person's life, it is also a social movement of acceptance and recognition. And that must be borne in mind. And so now it becomes like a style. It is, you have people just buying lock, and wearing it. It is a part of some culture now. So what do you do when you are in a situation like that? If we are working with a person, we should be close enough to the person to influence the person through dialogue and Bible study, the whole matter of adornment. And of course, we're not going to get into the debate of certain passages in the Bible that here, long hair is a shame unto a man, etc. But outside of those, there is the whole matter of modesty, both from the biblical perspective and the spiritual perspective, where Sis Ellen White, and I'm happily referencing her here, speaks about the honor of humility. So the whole matter of appearance, grooming, that is essential for the Christian. And we should endeavor to work with individuals to get them there so that they can truly represent the Lord. So what do we do in a situation where we have this becoming a style rather than a religion? It is more outward, it is inward in the heart. I would recommend dialogue, study, and patience. And maybe we have been very, very, very impatient because we want to count the souls. So we want to hastily baptize a person who is not yet convinced.
Well, you're introducing a topic there that's very dear to my heart, but I'm going to resist the temptation to go to it right now. But let's just be clear here. I think our viewers need to understand that listeners need to understand that the salvation is an act of God towards the sinner, right? And salvation precedes baptism. I, I, I want to make that clear so that people understand it is not the act of baptism that saves the individual. That individual is saved when he or she surrenders his or her life to Jesus Christ. But like you said, there is a growth process. There's a growth process. You don't become perfect overnight. The other matter is now the hairstyle now, whether it be genuine dreadlocks or just the hairstyle, the braids that people use, and some of them you can tell the difference, some you can't tell the difference. There are lots of Rastafarians I know whose locks are very modest in terms of, you can contrast that to some others that have this immodest look about it. I guess that depends on the individual. That's to some extent a bit of subjectivity there. Um, our real concern should be the personal surrender of the individual. This is what I think I hear you saying.
Yes, yes.
And encourage that individual to really commit to God. And if that individual truly surrenders to God, then that individual will find it easy to let go of anything that is contrary to the principles of the Bible.
Yes. The truth is, for me, and I speak from my own perspective, there is we talk about the optics,
Mhm.
whereby although the person is not expressing enough philosophy of Rastafarianism, but yet has the lock because of a learned behavior that is ingrained. Although the person is not, because the person has been a Rastafarian, and sometimes the person has ceased long before the hair goes. And I want you to think about that. Some people, they're
Actually, Doc, I had a case like that very recently.
okay.
The individual was Rastafarian, gave up Rastafarianism, but maintained a hairstyle, not because of Rastafarianism, but perhaps because of what they consider to be a heritage or cultural thing. You know, it to them spoke of their African identity, and they kept that. Over the process of years, perhaps 5, 6 years, that individual was exposed to
Yeah,
the message from the Adventist church and decided to surrender to Jesus Christ.
yeah,
And then on that occasion, and the reason I was familiar with this case is because it was referred to me, because on that occasion, the pastor said, listen, you need to cut your locks. And the person said, well, I'm not a Rastafarian, so this is not
yes.
indicating any allegiance to Haile Selassie. So that's a very interesting dimension.
So what if a person who was not a Rastafarian, a member of the church, decides to grow lock? What do we do?
You know, it's interesting because in Antigua now, and I see elsewhere, in Antigua right now, let me say in South Conference, um, as I kind of intimated before, the lock itself, and maybe we should make a difference here, LOCS, locks, as opposed to the dreadlocks,
Yeah,
is considered in many cases a hairstyle, and there are several persons who choose to put their hair like that. Now,
yes,
the issue over which hairstyle is appropriate and which hairstyle is not appropriate, that's another discussion. But clearly, there are individuals who have locks in their hair and they have no affiliation with Rastafarians
yes.
whatsoever.
So that's why it is really an issue, because we have to be very careful and meticulous how we try to legislate human behavior that is not, of course, clearly moral or immoral. Right. It is sort of neutral, and we have to probe to find out content, motives, etc. So we have to be careful, and I really want to register that. Now, at the same time, while we focus on the person as the object for our attention, we have to focus on ourselves too, right? Because sometimes the problem is with us, because we want to convey a certain message, but there comes a time when we have to allow individuals with patience to really change. And I don't want to be nebulous, but all I'm saying here is that while ideally the person is expected to cut his hair, well, sometimes, well, we haven't even discussed the other gender, but that is sometimes. But I am saying here that under normal circumstance, you expect when a person is belonging, then there's the behavior that would follow, is what we're talking about. And this will be impacted by the belief system that is Christocentric. Right. So I'm saying we ought to be cautious on the one hand, and at the same time be very resolute on the principle of the Bible re-adornment on the other hand. When we become dictatorial and hard and we try to coerce, it becomes a problem because we should know as spiritual leaders that if you have to be putting on a person, the person is not ready.
Well, I'm tempted to ask a question here, but there's so many questions that have come in. So I'm going to this time ask you a few questions from some of our viewers. Let's see what we have here. So this question, hold on 1 second. Here's the question, understanding the history and background as well as the ideology sets a good background for the discussion. What advice can you give to those who are following, that's Rastafarism, because of Black consciousness? So the person, when you started, you were given some historical perspective. The question here is, what advice can you give to those who are following because of Black consciousness? That's a popular thing these days.
Okay, beautiful. Thanks for the question. It's a very good question. God has placed a premium on all humanity. And there is no distinction from the standpoint of God that one set culture is more important than the other. So I would advocate and illustrate from the Bible the importance of the humanity of all, and to emphasize that we were all made in the image of the Lord and higher than the highest human thought can reach. And I'm quoting now Ellen White, is God's ideal for his children, and end quote. That is all his children. You know, whatever your color, whatever your ethnicity, whatever your nationality. So I would show from the Bible, and I'm encouraging from the Bible, that we were all made in the image of God. We must not allow ourselves to be suppressed, and we must not suppress others, and we must seek to maximize our full potential to be useful on earth in preparation for the life to come. So you are special. Every man, every Rasta man is special. And I'm happy you asked that, because there is something I really want to also share. The whole matter of tolerance, And when we talk about religious tolerance for those who are different and with different beliefs, behaviors, practices, we should understand that we should always be tolerant of the person. And by that I mean respectful of the person, affirming the person, loving the person, seeing the person as a person of worth. While at the same time, if the person espouses a certain belief that is not in line with the Bible, then we should disallow that, we should not accept that. But at no time, irrespective of any difference, should a person believe that he or she, from our standpoint and from the Lord's standpoint, is lesser than others.
A very, very important concept, Elder. And the reality is that unfortunately, some of our brethren struggle with that. That's the reality. We have to be able to respect people's choices. You know, one of the fundamental teachings of Scripture is that we were created with the power of choice. Yes. And if God gave us the ability to choose, then He is going to respect that choice ultimately, and we should likewise. Now here's another question. You know, I'm trying to get as many questions in as possible, because I'm looking and I'm realizing that we only have a remaining 20 or so minutes. Oh. Here's another question. The Nazarene vow is biblical, but often misunderstood by Rastafarians. Can you shed more light on what the Bible teaches about the Nazarite vow? This is from one of our listeners.
Yes. My understanding, I'm not theologian specializing in the Old Testament, but from what I have gleaned, the Nazarite vow, I think it's in Numbers 6 somewhere there, but I will speak to it. The Nazarite vow was one for a period. It was not lifetime. It was for a particular period. And it's a period for consecration. And more so, consecration is always either for, it's a response to what had transpired, or it's a preparation for what is to be done. But it's a personal journey. And the Nazarite vow was for a period and for consecration. And during that period, they were not to drink strong drink. They were not to use razor. They were to separate themselves. So there is no carryover into the New Testament and into Christendom, the whole matter of a Nazarite vow. So it was really exclusively an Old Testament period in time blocks for individuals to consecrate themselves. And the Bible was very specific that after the period, they could participate in what they used to, albeit that was on a right path. But there's no New Testament counterpart or within Christendom counterpart for the Nazarite vow. And it would not stand up amid the philosophy of Rastafarianism, because their behavior of having their hair as they do is for life. So there's no congruence with the Nazarite vow and their practice.
Okay, thank you very much, Elder. I think that's a decent response. Correct. Individuals oftentimes use the Bible selectively. They try to get passages that support their ideology or philosophy. So thanks for sharing that. Now, another question from our viewers, interesting question. I suspect the individual is disputing the need for cutting the locks if a person wants to get baptized. The question, maybe I'll ask two at one time. If a Buddhist monk wants to get baptized as a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, does he need to grow his hair first? I think you understand where that is going.
Well, that one got me. I tell you, that one got me. The answer is no from my knowledge, because if you look at my hair, you don't see anyhow. On my head, I might almost be like a Buddhist monk. But no, because the growing of hair is not expected. It's not a Christian behavior that is stipulated in the Bible or within our principles of operation. So to make it short and to provide for other questions, I will just say no to that.
I think it's an interesting question, but of course, if it's, the Buddhist monk has no hair in his head, and so you can identify with that. But let's expand it a little bit, because I think there is a point here. Let's expand it a little bit. A Muslim who wears the hijab and wants to become a Seventh Adventist, what would be your counsel if the person insists, after I get baptized, I'm going to continue to wear my hijab, I'm going to continue to use my Muslim identity, etc. Now, if the person is living, let's say, in Iran, perhaps there may be a reason for that. But in Jamaica, what would you say? I'm not sure about the Jamaican context or culture, but how would you advise a person like that?
Well, I'm happy you asked that, because right now we are working with many Muslims, and we are yet navigating the challenges, and we have not come up against such point of a hurdle as yet. But my response would be the same that I made regarding the Rastafarian, that we have to we have to be prudent and patient and be very careful how we move with alacrity toward having somebody engrafted as a disciple. And if you notice, the Bible talks about the whole matter of by beholding. By beholding, we become changed. 2 Corinthians 3, verse 18. And the truth is that is a linear action. And it speaks of a process. Just as how we talk about you're a new creation in 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 17. It is using the old language of the creation in as recorded in Genesis, which was a process to highlight the new creation in terms of lifestyle changes and becoming a Christian. So I'm answering it by saying that we should be careful that we thoroughly or reasonably indoctrinate the prospects so that they will not be misguided and believe that they can at the same time serve two masters and embrace two religions. So we should take time to educate so that there's clear understanding that whatever symbols that are carried over from another religion to Christianity, it would not be accepted because Christ wants all of us and the total of us, or full attention or full commitment. So I would say educate.
I think that's it. I mean, you said it precisely there. Now I'm going to ask two questions from our viewers and add a third to it. Again, we were talking around the peripheries of these questions. So this question is, where is it? Yes. I know the person says we are not yet there in the discussion. Well, we probably have passed since the question was asked. But what about those individuals who simply wear the hair as a style? And then another question, similar. What of Christians who locks, whether by braids or natural locks? So similar questions
Yes.
in terms of the hairstyle. Now I'm adding one to this. In Jamaica, do you have members of the church who go natural, wear locks, not affiliated with Rastafarianism, but as a hairstyle?
Yes, we do. And it is not an issue here at this time. Initially it was, but at this time it is not really an issue because there is a bent to be natural. There's a bent to be natural. But when this is associated with Rastafarianism, a religion, then it becomes a problem.
Okay, wonderful. Now, so again, I think similarly here, we do have individuals who choose to wear the locks as a natural thing and not associated. And that is why we have been indicating that, listen, if this is just a hairstyle, it has no affiliation, it is not a symbol of your loyalty to Haile Selassie, then we don't require any change. But the issue becomes if this now becomes symbolic of. That leads to something else, Elder. And I'm trying to juggle the time here because it's going so quickly. I want to do justice. In fact, let me give preference to the individuals who have been asking questions because we do not want to ignore the questions that have come in. So, and I also want to, okay, so we asked that one already. Here's another question. Can we wait until they change outwardly to baptize them? Would you allow a person who has two wives time to change after baptism, before baptism? That's a very interesting question. The matter of in fact, the question I was going to ask you when I pulled back is
it hypothetical, or you not have a situation like that in the Caribbean?
In the Caribbean, for sure, not at all. But on the issue of baptism, do we not sometimes, I mean, okay, go ahead, go ahead, and I'll not
Yeah.
not put that in.
Yeah, yes. It to me that's a different matter. It is not fuzzy. It is not an issue. When something is fuzzy and you can't find a ground, the whole underpinning, then it becomes an issue. But clearly, the whole matter of polygamy is not really supported by the Bible. And I'm talking how it was permitted along. It's another discussion. It's another discussion. There is permission based on cultural, situational, context, but we know it is not permitted by the Bible. So for us, it's not an issue, and we would not allow that. We know that in some places, where a person has more than one wife, what happens is that the person upon conversion will have to adhere to one wife, while at the same time, financially, the fiduciary responsibilities of the others would be related to. But it's just one wife that the person would relate to in the Adventist context.
Yeah, I'm going to resist the temptation for us to go down the line of the discussion of polygamy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. It is
but
another discussion.
yeah,
Can't be at the end. Yes.
that's right. Now, the issue of baptism, though, Elder, I think you hinted this earlier. Sometimes preachers, in a haste to get numbers, rush baptisms. Would you agree?
Yes. And may I just say something here, because I would not want to close and not really anchor this. I would not want to close and not anchor this. The If you're working with a Rastafarian, please spend time. They like the Bible, knowledge, wisdom. Spend time in the Bible, and you will see how they are progressing. And you will nudge along. We talk about the nudge theory of change. You'll ask the right questions. You're gonna ask about his philosophy of the here, and then you're going to show the whole matter of it being associated with Rastafarianism. Then it would not fit within the grid of Christianity. And as you work with people, sometimes you don't have to say cut your hair. I work with people already, and I haven't reached a point where I say you have to cut. People come and I look in church and I say, but wait, man, I'm expecting to see Greene here today. Where is he? I don't understand. And I'm saying, see, there he is. Cut, all cut. So I'm saying, take time to work with these individuals. And when you find that you have to be saying, you have to, and you have to, the person is not ready. And at the same time, I want to say that we have a response, just as how we are going through COVID-19 crisis, and we have a public health responsibility to others, we have a responsibility to the wider church to keep the church away from confusion and at the same time to educate the church. So we can't just ignore the wider body and say, all right, you believe that, so you just put the person on the wider body and cause with his hair and cause more challenges, then you're going to have a serious problem. So you have a spiritual responsibility to work with the person, educate the person, and at the same time, you have a spiritual responsibility to the sheep, some of whom I might say are newborn babes, lambs.
Our time is almost up. There are a few questions that I think we have answered in the process. Somebody was asking if it means that a person can't be saved if they have locks. I think we addressed that and we answered that. And here is this question. So if a woman has her hair locks, and she wants to be baptized. Does that mean she cannot be? So we have addressed that already. There's another question dealing with the issue of, I think we're going to address next week. We're talking about jewelry. If we're asking rastas to cut their hair, please ask ladies to take off their makeup like Jezebel. we will leave that for our discussion next week.
Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting discussion, because sometimes there's a thin line. Sometimes there's a thin line. You might not have on earrings and so on, but what do? The pastor is going to dictate, say you can only wear whatever. So it's you have to be here for that discussion.
Definitely. And I'm thinking that you illustrated just now, I'm watching the clock all the time. You illustrated just now that individuals, we need to take time and work with people to bring them to the point where they understand what they're doing. And naturally, that individual will give up what needs to be and embrace what needs to be embraced. We also have to prepare our congregation and educate them, because I've discovered that there are lots of people in the church who have some very misconstrued ideas and sometimes, unfortunately, even some fanatical ideologies that guide them. So it's two-way. We have to teach, we have to educate. Let's make this our last question. And again, I suppose next week we're going to deal in greater detail with this one, but why should God's peculiar people adorn themselves with identifying marks of a particular sect, which is known for smoking a drug? This is the last question we will ask this afternoon.
That is a particular sect that is known for what? Smoking.
A drug.
Smoking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why would God's people be identified with?
I think what the person is asking is, if we baptize somebody who has locks,
yes,
isn't that showing that the individual is identifying with those who use drugs? I think that's what's behind it.
No, we have to be careful. In the theological arena, there's a fallacy known as the fallacy of association, whereby because a person, is associated with or was associated with those who smoke, then we are saying now that person in the church is going to convey identity, as if we're identifying with a person who identifies with those who smoke. We have to be careful that we forgive individuals, people who have, and like ourselves, we were all messed up. So a person leaves certain company and desists from certain behavior. We should not associate the person with such any longer, and hence associate ourselves with such behavior because the person is among us. So it is really an association fallacy that we carry across the bridge, and it is really bad. It doesn't matter what a person used to do. Once the person comes in, then that person is a newborn babe, a new creature. All things are passed away. And like the Lord, we should welcome that person as the Father welcomed the prodigal son home.
Well, I think this is where we have to stay for today, Elder. I want to thank you so much for sharing your time and responding so eloquently to many of the troubling concerns that persons have. Next week, our discussion is on jewelry, and I know that is going to be a very intense discussion. But we look forward to having you here. 3 p.m. next week, same time. May God's blessings be yours. Keep safe.